In this video, I'm going to be talking about the movie Sinners. I'm going to just say up front that I'm going to give out spoiler alerts if you haven't seen the movie, because I just want to be able to talk about the movie freely without really thinking about what has been shown and what has not been shown as far as trailers. So if you haven't seen the movie, just be aware that if you watch this video, you may receive some spoiler alerts. So, as a Christian, heard a lot of Christians saying you shouldn't see this movie if you're a Christian because it's, about evil, sin, and different things like that. And I have seen other people review on the movie. But when I went in and actually watched the movie, I think I walked away with a different take from this movie or a different understanding than I have seen a lot of people with the different reviews that they have done. So the movie is about twin brothers, Smoke and Stack. They are coming back to their hometown. It's like based in 19, I think it's 19, it's based in 1932 in the Mississippi Delta, in their hometown called Clarksdale. And so Smoke and Stacks are coming back to start their own juke joint. They was in, they fought World War I. They also worked in Chicago for Al Capone. Now they want to build something of their own in their hometown for their people to be able to come, from sharecropping to go to a club, have fun, dance, and not have to worry about the clans because the clan was during that time and feeling uncomfortable, just a space for them. So the movie itself starts off with you see the Choctaw Indians. They're chasing this man by the name of Remit. He's an Irish man, and he's actually an Irish vampire. So when you see this in the beginning of the movie, it's kind of like out of nowhere. Why are these Choctaw Indians chasing this man? But if you think back during that time, when it came to the Irish people who came to this country, they was treated badly because when you think of the Klan white supremacists back in those days and even now, they only honor white people. They only want to be around white people and they want to keep everything white. And so with the Irish people, they're not considered white. Even though their skin tone is white, they're not considered white based on the Klan and based on white supremacists. So they kind of formed a bond with the Choctaw Indians, and the Choctaw Indians helped them out where at one point in time when they was, starving and different things like that. So because of that relationship, seeing the beginning of the movie with the Choctaw Indians chasing Remit, it made sense because if he somehow, whatever happened, turned into a vampire, they would have seen it, they would have known it because they would have been, like I said, associating with each other, around each other. So that's where that comes in at with the Choctaw Indians chasing Remit, the vampire, so they can go ahead and, kill him because they know exactly what he is. The first house that women run to happened to be Klan members. So he run in there looking for a salvation, well, looking for somewhere safe to be. And the Choctaw Indians was trying to let them know, you just don't know who you have in your house. But they ended up leaving because the sun was getting ready to go down. So they went ahead and left. Remit stayed there and he ended up turning the Klan members into vampires. The next relationship I want to talk about is Sammy and his father. Sammy is the son of a preacher, so they call him Preacher Boy, and he's also the cousins of the twins, Smoke and Stack. So with Sammy's relationship with his father know that he loves playing the blues, but his father wants him to stay in the Word, stay in the Bible, and you see that relationship when Sammy comes in and his father is in the church and his father is telling him, we're getting ready. I'm getting ready to, I want you to help me with Sunday's, I forget his exact words, but he wanted him to help him with what he was going to be saying for Sunday, the preaching. So on one side he had his banjo and Sammy singing and he was like, yes, I brought it out. And he said it there. And then on the pew was the Bible. So Sammy walked up and stood in front of the pew and started reading the Bible. And then he closed the Bible and he continued with the scripture because he knows the word. He grew up in the church. He grew up under a preacher, so he knows the word of God. So his father, at that moment, when he brought in the banjo and had it sitting there and the Bible sitting there, it reminded me of the choices that God gives us. You can choose life or you can choose death. So basically, his father was giving him that choice by placing that banjo there. You can choose the devil's music and play the blues, or you can stay here and continue to preach the gospel. Sammy made his choice. He grabbed the banjo and he left, met up with his cousins, and then his cousins, they ended up splitting up to go out and get the people they wanted to work in the juke joint for that night. So the next relationship, so that's let me kind of go back. So that's why I was saying, like, I see a lot of biblical references in this movie because basically the movie is called Sinners. So it's like they're pointing out different sins according to the Bible. So, like I said, Sammy went ahead and made his choice to choose death, to choose to play the devil's music. He ended up getting with his cousins, Smoke and Stack. Smoke is the one that was always in blue, and Stack was the one that was already in red. And when you looked at them two, even though they was twin brothers, their personality was totally different. Smoke was more about business. He was, like he come to do business. He didn't come to play, and he's always on point. That's why he was always like trying to negotiate and also help other people learn their value. Just don't take what someone trying to give you. Work out a deal with yourself and get what you worth. So he's about business. Stacks, on the other hand, he's more playful. He's not as serious as Smoke. So you see that dynamic between them two. So Smokes go to handle business as far as getting the food and different things like that. And then Stack, he goes to handle the more fun things, getting people to actually perform in the club and different things like that. So the first person he goes to is the piano player, and this also speaks, like I said, towards sin. Here it is, a piano player by the name of Delta Slim. He's giving Delta Slim an opportunity to play for him, and Delta Slim kept saying no. He's like, you're going to get $20 a night, and he's like, no, I'm working for these other people, and they're paying me constantly. How can I guarantee that I'm going to get $20 a night from you? How do I know that this is going to continue and it's not just going to be one night? So basically, why should I give up money that I know I'm going to get on the regular compared to what you're willing to give me? So he didn't want to go for it. But then he offered him alcohol. So money wasn't the sin that moved him, because money is not the sin, but money wasn't what moved him. Alcohol was. So that's like the devil. The devil find out what you're into, what you want, what will drive you, what will move you. So for him, for Delta Slim, it wasn't the money that he was interested in. It was more the alcohol, because he kept saying, I can drink all the corn liquor I want to. So when he offered him better liquor and said, you can drink all you want, he went for that deal. So in the Bible, it speaks about always having a sober mind, be sober minded. And it also speaks about drunkards. Drunkards will not enter the kingdom of heaven, because God sees being a drunkard as a sin. So that's another play on the Bible and the premise of the movie Sinners. And then the next person I want to talk about is Mary, which is Stack's ex-girlfriend. And she's biracial, but she can pass as white. From the first time she showed up on scene, she was trouble. And so he should have been stronger with trying to get rid of her, especially knowing that she was someone else's wife at this point. They may have had a relationship in the past, but she is someone else's wife. So, don't entertain her, just let her go. But he had a hard time doing that. And even in the club, It was like his brother didn't even like seeing her in that club. It was like basically do something, get rid of her, don't be around her, because his brother Smoke knew she was trouble. And you can see that from the beginning. She came at him with that whole attitude. So, and then with her being a married woman, regardless of what relationship they had in the past, she should have went ahead and got on the train and left and went back to her husband. But instead, she didn't do that. And then when you look at Cornbread, he's a sharecropper. He's out in the field working next to his wife. And Stack is trying to get him to leave the field and come be a bouncer. He's saying no, regardless of what, him offering money or whatever he's offering. He's like, no, I'm going to stay out here with my wife. And his wife was pregnant, so he felt like I'm going to stay out here with her. But instead of her as a woman staying in her place, referring back to the Bible, she spoke up and convinced him to go. If she would have not said anything, because it's two men talking, and allowed those two men to continue talking, her husband would have been home with her instead of at the club being a bouncer. Because you see, it kind of reminds you of with Adam and Eve. God put Adam in charge. And so the final decision of what to do and what not to do was up to Adam. But Eve ended up convincing him, the snake convinced Eve, and Eve ended up convincing her husband to go ahead and eat the fruit, and they ended up getting kicked out of the garden. So that's what this part with Cornbread and his wife remind me of. His wife should have stayed out of the conversation, allow her husband to stay home. But because she was pushing him out there to get more money, neither did her. She didn't end up with the more money. It was a loss because she lost her husband. So here she is pregnant out in the fields working, and I think they may have had other children, not knowing what happened to her husband, what's going on. So that was the sin of, not allowing your husband to be the head of the household, and then trying to dictate to him what he should do as far as making more money for the family, instead of letting him be the head of the household and make the decision. And then with Annie, who is Smoke's wife, that kind of brings up like different religion. You have Christianity with Sammy and his father, and then with Annie, I think she kind of mixed both Christianity and hoodoo or voodoo together. And so she was more on the hoodoo side, and you can see that by how she was like putting herbs together and everything like that, putting it in the sack and putting it around Smoke's neck. But she was also the more sensible one, as far as the one being more grounded. Her and Smoke was the one that was more grounded. And then when you see Grace and Bo, that kind of goes to when they're in the club. You see a cross around Grace's neck, so that leads you to feel that she is a Christian. Her and Bo is a Christian. And so, well, I'm sorry. Let me kind of get to the actual club scene itself. Okay, so now when they're in everyone's in the club, everyone is having a good time, and Sammy is playing music. He's playing, the blues and stuff like that. And you see where it's kind of transitioning between the past, present, and the future. And when you talk about music, that's why they say the music is the devil's playground, or is from the devil, and that especially with the blues music, because a lot of times they say people sell their soul in order to be a great blues player. But they say the devil is in the music, and the reason why is you listen to a lot of music, whether it's from the past, whether it's in the present, or the future music. It doesn't take you to God; it pulls you away from God. Because it's not that music is evil, because you see they have gospel music also. Gospel music is praising God, saying how great he is. The devil is the opposite of God. So the devil also want people praising him. And he do that with music as well. When people talk about adultery, when people talk about fornicating, when you listen to music, a lot of music that's from the past and today, they celebrate, adultery. you hear songs about, that's someone else's wife, cheating on the husband, cheating on the wife. And the blues music was like that also, about their woman left them, how they're with this person, that person. And then the music of today. So that's how the music kind of like, you see it going from generation to generation, from the past, present, and the future, because it's like they're celebrating the devil. This is the devil music. They're giving him homage in the music. And that's why the vampires, when they heard that, they came. And when they came, they was drawn by the music, what Sammy was playing, because they knew his music can help trans. His music can help do what they needed to do, because they're vampires and they're looking at, we can use him and his music to bring other people in, because they already knew what they was going to do with the people in the club. That's why they wanted to get in. If they was allowed to get in by saying, "Oh, we just want to play music. We just want to listen to music. We just want to dance with you." If they was allowed to get in, they would have killed everyone while they was in there. But they knew if they can get Sammy and get him on their side, they can have clubs. He can play music, and that would draw people, giving them an opportunity to turn all these other people into vampires. And then, when going back to Mary, when I was saying that Mary was trouble from the beginning, when Smoking Stack was talking, and he was talking about money, how they would, how they wasn't really going to make a profit that night, and if they continued the same way, they're not going to make a profit at all. So Mary is overhearing this. So she's saying, because I'm white or because I look white, I can go out there and talk to them to find out exactly what they really wanted. Even though they told the vampires no, they could not come in, even though they didn't know there was vampires, they was like, no, you cannot come in. So therefore, they was like sitting out there waiting for an opportunity with someone coming out to get them once they came out. So if Mary wouldn't not have been there, if she would have stayed away, she wouldn't have went out there and got turned by the vampires. Because when she got turned, the only reason they let her back in is because of who she was. And then when she went up to Stacks and was like, yeah, showing him the gold that the vampires had gave her, and like, oh, they got money and different things like that. That's where greed come in. And then she ended up seducing Stacks. That's where fornication and adultery come in, because she was a married woman. So all these sins are coming up, being greedy for money, instead of standing on your belief, because like I said, his brother was about business. I don't care what these people want. I don't care about their money. I don't care about any of that. We are building this for black people only, so don't allow them to come in. But because she feel like, I can pass as white, I can get information from them that y'all can't get, and maybe it can benefit us when it comes to money. But even though she wasn't part of the business, she was supposed to be on the train going back to her husband. And it's like, because of Stack's sin, that led him being turned into a vampire. And then when that happened, they cleared the club, everyone else went out, and you know what happened to everyone else. So the only people that are not vampires at this time are the ones that's still inside the club. And then with Grace and Bo, when Bo went out there and he was like, I'm going to get the car, and he came back, and then, they realized that he was a vampire. And then Grace, when they were speaking about her daughter, even though she was supposed to be a Christian because she had a cross on that was supposed to represent that she was a Christian, she did not stand on her faith. She had fear. Her fear of, they're going to turn my daughter into a vampire, made her do what she did. But if she would have thought about it, if they wanted to turn her daughter into a vampire, they would have left then, or one of them or two of them would have left and turned her daughter into a vampire. But instead, they all stayed there, because the one they really wanted at that time was Sammy. He was more valuable to them than her daughter. But her fear of what may happen to her daughter made her, act erratical, made her want to call the vampires in. And so that's where fear come in, because when you think about the Bible, and Gideon was getting ready to fight, and they already had less people in their army than the other army. But God told Gideon, first get rid of the people who are afraid, because people who are afraid can make bad decisions for not only themselves, but if they're in a group, they can make bad decisions for the group. So if Grace wasn't there, her bad decision, her fear led her to call in the vampire, not thinking about everyone else that was in there, not thinking about they don't have a plan on how to fight the vampires, not thinking about they're outnumbered. All she wanted to do is get them in there. And it's still not saying that that would have stopped them from actually getting to her daughter. But because of that fear she had, she reacted in a way that she should not have had, that caused other people their lives. And then when it comes back to Annie, when she was speaking about the vampire, and even though in that time and era, the Klan was supposed to be the worst when it comes to the relationship between black and white people, because the black people only really feared the Klan as far as what they could do and how they was moving. So their only enemy at that time would have been the Klan. But she noted, if you notice what she said, Annie stated that they are the worst of the worst, because they are the type of people that can't die. And they, even if the person that turned them die, it's like the other people continue to live on. And I'm gonna kind of get back to that, as far as what I'm thinking she meant, as far as the vampires being the worst of the worst. And so, how I ended with, Smokes not being able to kill his brother. And that's another thing. Knowing everything that, because he Smoke killed Annie, his wife, and he had no problem doing that because that's what she wanted. But when it came to killing his brother, even though he knew that his brother was a vampire, even though he knew, because Annie was saying, like, if you get turned into a vampire, you would never be able to be with your people again. You would never be able to go, you won't be able to die and be with your ancestors. And so it looked as if his love for his brother is what caused him not to kill his brother. But sometimes when you think about it, he's sitting there, he has the opportunity to kill his brother, but he don't, because if he killed his brother, he's basically killing himself, because he looks at his brother and he sees himself. Even though he know the evil that his brother is, even though he know what that he can go out there and turn other people into vampires, he still allow him to live, because he don't want to kill himself, someone that looks just like him. And that's right there speaks of the mentality of a lot of people, regardless if they're black or white or whatever. They know what their people are doing, whether they're black people, and they know that black people are going out there doing things they shouldn't do. They still defend them because of their skin color. The same thing with white people. They know white people are going out there doing things they shouldn't do, but they defend them because of their skin color. So it's that mentality of, I don't want to betray or kill something that looks like me. So even though I know it's bad, I'm going to allow it to live on. That's why when you see people, women supporting men who have S8 kids, because it's like they don't want, I don't want to destroy a black man because of what he did. I'm going to let it go. Even though he knowing this black man is going around hurting other kids. And that's the same thing with the white people. They know there are white people out there going around SAing kids. They know they trafficking kids, but they don't say anything. The women do the same thing. They be quiet. They allow it to happen because they don't want to destroy this white man. They don't want to put this white man out there. They're protecting the predator, which was a vampire, which are these evil people. They're protecting that and sending it back out there into the world to infect other people. And so that's what I get out of that situation with Smoke not killing his brother and allowing him to live, because it's like, and even though he know his brother is now evil, even though he know his brother would never be able to be at rest with their ancestors, based on what Annie was saying, he was still wanting him to live, because he didn't want to kill himself, because he looked like him. He reminded him of him because they're twins. And then to go back to Sammy, Sammy is alive in spite of everything he went through. He's holding on to just the base, the handle of the banjo, and he finally go back home to his father. His father's in church preaching. His father did not question him. Just like when he was leaving, his father did not try to stop him from leaving. And when he came back, reference to the Bible, he was like the prodigal son returning. His father was happy to see him. His father wasn't questioning him. Here he is, disheveled, got a scar on his face, got bloody clothes, only holding on to the strings of the handle of the banjo. His father never questioned him, like, where you been, what happened, what's going on. All his father is asking him, are you ready to turn away from the evil? Are you ready to let it go? Are you ready to get rid of the evil? He's, like I said, he's treating him like a prodigal son. He's just happy he came back. But once again, given this choice, this man done committed adultery because the woman that he liked it. I forget her name, but the woman that he liked it, she was also married. She's singing, the blues music just like he was singing. And, he did that, and everything he experienced Pearline, I'm sorry, her name was Pearline. So even though Pearline was married, he still wanted to be with her. And then, in spite of everything he's seen as far as the vampires, his cousin getting killed, his, Annie getting killed, all these other people dying, in spite of seeing all that, he's given a choice again between life and death. He chooses death. He chooses evil. He don't want to stay in the light. And another part of the movie is when Sammy is now older and he has been playing blues in the nightclub. And then I think it's supposed to be in the 90s, that era. And then Stax and Mary come in there. They're dressed in 90s clothes and everything. And, Stax is still offering to turn him into a vampire. And he's like, no, he don't want to be turned. And so, excuse me, one of the things that Sammy brought up is like, he asked, kind of went back to that night of when it all kind of happened and they turned into vampire. Well, Stax turned into a vampire. And so they both was saying like at what, excuse me, Sammy was saying like before everything happened, that was like one of the happiest nights of his life. Being at the juke joint singing blues, everything that went on, that was one of the happiest moments of his life until, the sun went down and the vampires came. And Stax was saying, that was one of the happiest times of his life as well, because before the sun went down, that was the last time he was with his brother, during the light, when the sun was out, when the sun was shining, he was with his brother. And now being a vampire, it's like he can never be in the light again. He will always be in the dark. And then also with Sammy, even though he's choosing to be a blues singer and he's not a vampire, blues, music, being in clubs, that basically take place at night. So he kind of, they're kind of different, but in the same position where they turn from the light. And, in the Bible, the light represents God. We as Christians are supposed to be the light of the world, to shine the light on evil. And then the evil, they're always in the dark. They don't want to come out in light because the light will expose them. So that's where I see another Bible reference come in with the light and the dark. And even though they did not show, that Mary or Stax changed anyone else to a vampire, but when you look at vampire movies, that's basically the premise of it, because they need to feed off of living people in order to stay alive. So, and then like some people are turning, saying that this is romantic because now he gets to spend eternity with Mary. And it's like, that kind of goes back to fantasizing on evil, making evil, trying to make evil sound good. If that was the case, and like I said, based on how vampires are, what about everyone else that's gonna end up losing their lives because they were still allowed to live? So to fantasize evil is like you're overlooking they're killing good people. They're killing, other people in order to survive. And that's where I want to go back to when Annie was saying the vampires are the worst of the worst. Because even if you killed the person that made them into vampires, they still live on. And I feel that's like ideology. When you notice when the vampires was dancing, they was doing like that river dance, and everyone's like happy when they got turned into the vampire. They was initially happy. They was having a good time. You have black people with the clans, people with the Irishmen, but everyone is happy. Everybody is enjoying themselves, and that's how some of the ideology that we have out there is. If you think back to 20 to the 4 years that we had under Biden, all these agendas that was coming out there, the critical race theory, the Marxism, the communists, the the supremacists, white supremacists, all these different ideologies are coming out there, and people are mentally soaking this up, and to them it's right. It's nothing wrong with it. So even though these people are vampires, they don't see anything wrong with them being vampires, and they want to turn other people into vampires. And if you think about in today's what's going on in today, right now you see a lot of black against white, white against black, a lot of racial tension. But it's something out there that's worse than racial tension, because if you notice in the movie, the racial tension was between the Klan and the black, but she said there's something worse than that. And that's the ideology of caliphate, because why black and white are still fighting like in the movie, they're focusing on each other. They didn't notice the other evil that was coming. And I feel the vampire is more of the ideology of caliphate because everybody defends it. They don't see anything wrong with it. They don't want to speak out against it. Only certain people who say something is wrong to speak about the danger of that. And with caliphate, that will affect everyone, regardless if you're black, regardless if you're white, regardless if you're Chinese, regardless if you're a white supremacist, regardless if you're pro-black, regardless of all that. Caliphate will come in and destroy all that. Just like in the movie with the vampire did not have any prejudices of who they destroyed. They wanted to destroy everybody. And they wanted to make everyone like them. And so if with Caliphate, it's either you turn and be like us or you die. So that's what I got from the movie. Like I said, I feel there was a lot of biblical references to this movie as far as the sin of adultery, as far as the sin of the love of money, as far as the sin of not allowing your husband to be the head of the household, and you're making the decision, because every decision they made that went against what God says ended up costing them their life in one way or another. And then another thing, when it comes to vampire movies, like they really didn't show it in this movie, because I know I heard someone says like they made it seem as if Christian, when Sonny, excuse me, when Sammy started saying the prayer, repeating the verse of the Bible, and then the vampires start repeating that same verse. It's like with the devil knows the Bible, and so you have to think about, even though Sammy father wanted him to be a preacher, ever since he was a child, he was in the church. Ever since he was a child, he knew scripture. But then you have to ask yourself, was the scripture ever in him? He was in the Bible, he was in the church, but did he ever open up his heart to truly allow the scripture to come in? Because he was given two choices. The first choice he was given to choose either to go out and play in the juke joint with your cousin or help me prepare a sermon. Then when he came back as the prodigal son, his father was welcoming him back with open arms. And he still chose to go out there and serve the devil, basically with the type of music that he was singing. So once again, he chose his life, he chose his faith. And that's what a lot of people do. They may be born in a Christian household. They may have went to church on a daily. They may have did all this different stuff that from the outside you say, yeah, they're a Christian. But then when you look on the inside of the heart, what is it they really want? He was chasing the world. He wasn't chasing God. He was chasing the world. And so that speaks back to the Bible and Christianity. So even though this movie had a lot of, scenes that, according to Christian would have been inappropriate, but I feel that the director referenced the Bible a lot when it came to this movie, and I feel that he also referenced what's really going on in the world now, as far as different things that's happening in the world, and like I said, the different sins that each of these people had, and so that was my take on the movie as a Christian. That you have a choice in life. You can either choose darkness or you can choose light. Thank you for watching my video. My name is Del Roche. Please like, share, and subscribe.